As the sun sinks and the tide turns, a glorious mudflat transforms to silken gold. Waders probe in the glistening shallows. Shell ducks sieve out evening jewels. And a black-headed gull dances as they all feast on Arne's riches. Join us for this year's final Springwatch.
Hello!
Hello!
And welcome to Springwatch 2023. It's the final programme coming to you from the RSPB Arne Reserve down here on the Isle of Purbeck in Dorset. The sun is still shining. Had a fantastic time down here, not just on Arne, but the Supranational Nature Reserve that surrounds this area, all of the fantastic species that live here. And of course, we've got more coming up tonight. We've also got Ophiophagy coming. Yep, we've got Ophiophagy. Hold on to your pants. Ophiophagy.
Ophiophagy, we'll find out what that is later. It has been an extraordinary series for one particular, well, for lots of reasons, but one in particular. First year that we haven't had to wear our waterproofs.
No puffer.
For a live show. I know, it's been extraordinarily hot. Blue skies, sunshine, stunning sunsets. So it certainly seems like it's been a lot hotter and drier than normal. But what's the data? Let's have a look at the stats from the Met Office. Well, they have said that certainly here in Dorset, it has been a lot drier. We've had 4% of the average total of expected rainfall for June. By now, it should have been 43%. And it has been hotter, already 1.4 degrees higher than normal, and as I say, only at the beginning of June. It's been lovely for us in the sunshine, but for our wildlife, it's been hot, hot, hot. And we've seen the chicks really panting to try and keep cool. I mean, just look at that hot bird. Reptiles, of course, have loved it. They've been basking out in the sunshine, wondering what all the fuss is about. But as I say, it has been hotter and drier, and that means that the vegetation is like a tinderbox. So if you are going out this weekend into the wild outdoors, which I would encourage you to do, then take a picnic. Don't have a barbecue, because even a tiny spark can cause absolute devastation. And they saw it last year after we left at Wild Ken Hill. One little spark and years of hard work of rewilding, of conservation was up in flames in a minute. So please be careful if you do go out.
Particularly in these habitats, what we're looking at here behind us spread out is sandy lowland heath. It's open, it's hot, it's dry. It's, as you say, it's like a tinderbox at the moment. And this habitat, I have to tell you, is rarer than tropical rainforest. So if this goes up in flames, it's not only a tragic loss for Dorset or the UK, but globally too. So, yeah, ditch the barbecue, stick with the sandwiches. Let's take a look at our live remote cameras at the moment. There they are. Now, my choice. Guess where I'm going? Nightjar, please. Look at that. Oh, one little last stroke of the trousers. Oh, yes. Beautiful, isn't it? Absolutely beautiful. Can't see the chick there, however, and we know that there is one chick remaining. If you were watching earlier, you'll know that this female ate her other chick alive. But look, the remaining chick is doing really, really well. Look how much it's grown. There's the adult with that little quiff there, unintentional quiff. It's a bit of a mistake. I'd have combed that down if I was going to be on TV, personally. There's the chick hiding in the shadow on the lower right-hand side. Not surprising, it's covered in this thick coat of down. And I can tell you that on a hot day like this, the ground temperature can be 10 degrees higher than the air temperature. So if the air temperature is 28, and it has been here, down on the ground where that chick is, it can be 38 degrees. So that's great for the adult when it wants to do a spot of sunbathing. Why has the chick got the downy coat, you might be asking, if that's the case? Well, that's because at night the reverse is true. It can be 10 degrees colder down on the ground. So it's dropped down here to sort of 14, 18. There it could be 4 degrees down on the ground. That's why it's got that down. Nice little yawn there. And let's hope that these adults continue to find enough food to rear this youngster, and at some stage in the very near future, it produces its wings, learns to fly, and wends its way all the way back to Africa for the winter. What a sight, look at that, sensational.
It is sensational. I mean, it shocked us at the beginning by eating its chick alive, but now it's got one chick that is hopefully going to continue to do really well. Let's check out our buzzard nest, because this was another shocker, wasn't it? This chick that's looking extremely healthy and has grown immensely since we last saw it is the chick that attacked its sibling. As I say, it's grown a lot, and it looks very handsome there. It's stretching its wings, but as I say, it was not going to tolerate a sibling in that nest. It attacked it and pushed it out of the nest, and now it's flapping its wings, it's almost ready to go, and, well, ready to branch, should I say, and it's getting all the food that was supposed to be for the two of them. Now, a few of you wanted to name this chick. I'm going to read you just a couple of them. Peaky Blinder, Beaky Blinder, which I think is quite good, and Marmite. And I think that's a good name because you could either look at that chick and call it a psychopath or an ultimate survivor. And as nature is red in tooth and claw, I think ultimate survivor is what it is because it's doing remarkably well and will be fledging in the near future.
Okay, from an ultimate survivor to a species which so sadly has failed to ultimately survive in the wild, where it is functionally extinct. Yes, I know you're going to coo, but this animal is functionally extinct in the UK. It's the Scottish wild cat. Now, they were ruthlessly persecuted, they've suffered loss of habitat, but more recently they've been hybridising with domestic cats, and that's the reason for their functional extinction. There are so many domestic cat genes in that population now that we can't really call them pure Scottish wildcats. But in the 1970s, some of them were taken into captivity, into zoological collections, and they didn't hybridise as much, and those animals have a much more intact genome. So, the Royal Zoological Society of Scotland started Saving Wildcats, the project, along with 7 other partners. We went to see them back in 2019. They took those cats with greater genetical integrity and started breeding them. And that project has been going very, very well, but it's reached a new point.
First of all, though, I should say, I don't know what it is about kittens, but whenever we show wildcat kittens, I can guarantee you people are at home on their sofa looking and going, oh.
I'm sure they are.
They are adorable. And we do have good news about that project because this week they have started to release 22 of those wildcats back into the wild. You can see this one is coming out of its pre-release cage, and that's where they put them as kittens to learn to be wild again and to learn to behave well. I know they don't look like they are now, but these kittens will turn into ferocious hunters. You can see it's got a tracking collar on, and they will be monitored closely by the Saving Wildcats team. They're being released into specially selected sites in the Cairngorms. And as I say, they might look like domestic moggies, but they do turn into ferocious killers. And they're on the brink. So if this project is successful, which hopefully it will be, it could be the start of its recovery. A lot of hard work has gone into getting those cats back into the wild. And fingers crossed it's going to be a success. Yeah. Very exciting
Great
stuff.
Piece of proactive conservation from Saving Wildcats. Hats off to David Barclay and his team. Top work. How about a bit of hot news?
Oh no, that's like dad dancing.
Are you doing it now to annoy you?
You're on
hot
telly,
news.
do you know that?
I don't care, to be quite honest with you. If you remember last year, bee-eaters turned up to breed in Norfolk for the first time. Not the UK for the first time, but Norfolk for the first time. They were in a stone quarry, sandy quarry, near Cromer. Several pairs were breeding there. They fledged 5 young, 2 of which at least were seen flying off south when they departed at the end of the summer. And they were a great draw for lots of bird watchers. Now, they have never, although they've bred in the UK before, returned to the same site the following year. Well, that's until this year, because a short while ago, 3 of them turned up at the very same quarry and started to go through their breeding cycle. And I can tell you with great excitement that 5 more turned up yesterday. And if you'd like to go and see them, you can, from tomorrow, from 7 in the morning until 7 at night. The site will be wardened to protect the birds and also to provide you with a fantastic experience. And it's £5, kids go free. Come on, something for the weekend.
Oh, I think they're stunning. The colours on them are absolutely absolutely extraordinary. Let me guess, though, that's not a bird that you particularly like. Bit gaudy.
Yeah, a bit gaudy for me, and also a bit scary, because we've got to see these things as climate refugees. I mean, this is a very clear sign that things are changing. You know, these birds typically should have been breeding in southern Europe, at most northern France, but if they're becoming regular here in the UK, that is something to worry about. That's something that we should note and heed.
On the Springwatch, every year we talk about what we can all do in our gardens and our own patches to help wildlife. And as usual, you've listened, you've acted, and you've sent us photos of what you've done. I mean, we asked you to make bee bricks. Look at that, we've got bee bricks. We asked you not to mow your lawn. You haven't mowed your lawn, and look at the result. We've asked you to plant wildflowers, and look at that, absolutely beautiful. And we know that sometimes big changes come from small actions. So if you'd like to be inspired and get to know more ideas of what you can do, then go onto our website, press the link for Open University, and there are lots of ideas there that you can also get involved with.
Well, there we are, strong start. Nightjars, wildcats and orchids growing out of a lawn on account of your action. But enough from Arne. Let's head north to North Wales, to Gillian, who's found one of the most picturesque spots in the UK.
It absolutely is. And I'm sad to say it is our last night of our North Wales tour. We're back at the RSPB Reserve at South Stack. Dramatic coastlines and sea cliffs that are host to globally important seabird colonies right through the spring and summer months here. So just to take a look at the site here, it's beautiful, as Chris said. This is the approach to South Stack. The lighthouse there, you can see this is like a seabird's eye view. Now, the lighthouse itself was built in 1809. It was built to guide ships around these rocky coastlines, particularly during stormy seas. So that's something we haven't seen much of, but we have seen a lot of their seabirds, like this fulmar. Really underrated bird, in my opinion. They're beautiful when you see them gliding in, using so little energy, coming into land at the nest site there. They're very faithful to those nest sites. They're also faithful to each other. They often mate for life. And the sunny weather, light breezes means that seabirds have been rafting, making the most of calm seas to rest, to preen. And we've seen these lovely birds as well, puffins. There are 10 nesting here this year, in amongst the thousands and thousands of guillemots. This is by far the most numerous species here at the colony. They nest on the bare, rocky ledges of the cliffs there. They're splattered with guano. The droppings there, very noisy, raucous, probably quite smelly as well. There are 13,800 of these guillemots nesting here at the last count, and then more familiar things, herring gulls with their chicks in a much more natural environment to what we're used to seeing in towns and cities. And then the razorbills. Now, I would say for me, these are possibly my favorite over here. They're absolutely fantastic birds. There are 165,000 breeding pairs UK-wide. Here at South Stack, 1,800 razorbills, like I said, in amongst all those guillemots. Now, like I said, I love the razorbills. They do get a little bit lost between the puffins with all their flair and the guillemots with all their numbers, but they really are deserving of a closer look. Those bills, look at that, flattened, thick, with that blunt end giving them the name. In contrast to that guillemot in the foreground there, you can see with that very pointy, slender bill. Now, the breeding birds, the razorbills, will have these chunky bills during the breeding season, but in the non-breeding bird, they're less pronounced, and also that groove becomes less noticeable. So absolutely lovely to see these birds here. And we've had our wildlife camera operator, Steve Phillips, filming this seabird colony, and we've seen some really lovely behavior with the razorbills, a real treat. Now, this was filmed a few weeks ago, and we see these seabird pairs preening each other. This is called allopreening. And research has shown that this sort of behavior is much more common in species that share their parental responsibilities. And it sort of makes sense. You keep your mate healthy and parasite-free, and I imagine that kind of feels pretty good too. So helping to reinforce that pair bond. The female will lay one egg each year, and you can see the pair here. They're swapping incubation duties, so very much a job share. One will head out to sea and forage while the other one sits on the egg. And once they share these job-sharing duties, they continue with that preening behavior as well. Delicate, even though those bills look so chunky. Real treat to watch these birds. Absolutely some of my favorite. Now, of course, once the chicks hatch, that job sharing will continue because now they've got to keep those chicks safe from aerial predators, of which there are plenty at South Stack. And gulls, there are plenty of gulls, the herring gulls, but also the more ominous, chunky, much larger greater blackback gull as well. Now, you see both species cruising, patrolling these sea cliffs on the lookout for not just eggs, but for the newly hatched chicks. Of course, that is all because they need to feed their own chicks, their own brood. The cycle of life. They absolutely do need that food. So, from seabirds that live life on the edge to a humble caterpillar that has some toxic talents.
The broad rolling hills of Dorset's chalklands. Full of hidden surprises. Including the intricately patterned and incredibly rare burnet moth caterpillar. This well-dressed fussy eater feeds exclusively on bird's foot trefoil. Now, trefoils may look innocent to the eye, but both the petals and leaves are capable of releasing hydrogen cyanide. Yet the hardy burnet moth caterpillar munches away unscathed. It absorbs toxins found inside the plant for its own use against predators, making its own cyanide. The caterpillar stores the potent toxin in cavities inside its thick skin, oozing dangerous droplets when threatened. Rather than camouflaging itself, the caterpillar advertises its toxicity with eye-catching yellowy green and black colouring, warning predators to keep well away. Thus, the caterpillar can finish its meal in peace. When it's finally ready, and as the sun comes out, it finds the perfect spot for pupation. In a rarely seen marvel of nature, it spends the next 4 hours spinning itself into a delicate cocoon. The caterpillar begins releasing enzymes that would digest parts of its own body, reorganizing its organs to form the adult moth. This remarkable, parchment-like opaque casing will provide protection over the next month to allow this marvellous metamorphosis to take place.
What about that?
What an amazing animal that caterpillar is, able to process cyanide. I mean, that's seriously pretty cool. And also to get that footage, to see it wrapping itself in silk and pupate and transform itself, wow, you don't get to see that very often. That was really, really smart imagery there, really cool to see. But I know you're wondering, what does the adult look like? Well, it's a 5-spot burnet moth. It's a day-flying moth. It's absolutely exquisite when you get your eye into it. It's this inky black-blue moth with 5 spots on each set of wings. Now, it can be found in England and Wales, but look at the details of it. You can see it's almost shimmering, you can see the scales on its wing. And as I spoke about a little earlier before, it all helps with acoustic camouflage. It's a real beautiful moth that you can see out and about. It feeds on things like knapweed, thistles and other grassland flowers. So make sure, if you're looking out, to see the flash of red, because you never know if you're going to be lucky enough to get a glimpse of it. A beautiful, beautiful moth. Keep an eye out for it. Now, of course, I am here at Arn again today. Where am I? Well, let's have a look. I am about up here, but over the course of the series I have had the absolute pleasure of exploring the Isle of Purbeck as a whole, and it's been so important and thrilling to see all of these organisations working together for the sake of conservation. Working together we can learn a lot, and nature certainly does it probably better than we all do, and it's an amazing relationship with something called a silver-studded blue. Now, we saw this a little bit earlier on, but we wanted to highlight this species because it has a really fascinating relationship. This is the female. The male was a little bit earlier on. He's more blue, and she's a little bit darker with those kind of orange-red patches. Now, the moment the females emerge, the males get right onto it because they waste little time in mating. It's really fascinating to see them all coming together. They will kind of swarm the female to all get a chance to mate. Of course, you want to pass your genetic material on to the next generation. They're very determined. Look at that, all of them there on one branch. Ah, really cool to see that, isn't it? Very, very good. But once the female is mated with, it then needs, of course, to lay its eggs. So it goes into short vegetation to do so. But it lays them very cleverly. It lays them next to ants, in particular, in this case, black ants. And here you can see the caterpillar, and it's surrounded by these ants. Now look at that circles there. Now this is something called tentacle organs, and you'll see them pulsating. And this release a pheromone that the ants are attracted to. But why bother? Well, right there is something called a newcomer's gland. And this secretes a really sugary substance that the ants just can't resist. So it keeps them working. And the ants actually protect the caterpillars. And it's this amazing symbiotic relationship that you can see going forward. Now, when the adults emerge, of course, we saw that with the caterpillar and the pupae there, well, they still have a little bit of the pheromone left, so the ants are attracted to them when they first come out for about 30 minutes or so. And the butterflies take advantage of this because at this point in time, they are still quite vulnerable. They need to pump their wings in order to take flight and get on with that mating we saw earlier. And you can see them surrounded by all these ants here. Now, I know what you're thinking. This one seems to be grabbing the adult's antennae and kind of pulling it back on. Maybe it doesn't want it to go. Now that's very much anthropomorphizing, putting human emotion onto things. But they are so driven by that response to that pheromone, which was previously emitted by the caterpillar and this newly emerged individual, that it seems to be quite into that scent. But this is where it gets really interesting. So here, down below, we have a silver-studded blue captured by a carnivorous sundew plant. Now, what's fascinating here is that there's 2 hypotheses. So this could be a newly emerged individual, and therefore the ants are still attracted to it, and therefore trying to somewhat protect it, although again, that is a little bit of a far stretch. But we did ask an expert about this, and they said that this moth does look a little bit older. It looks a little bit scraggly round the edges. So perhaps what the ants could be doing is actually trying to predate it. So it's a really interesting symbiotic relationship. Either the ants are trying to protect it because of that pheromone that it emitted, or they're trying to take it. Either way you look at it, it's really interesting behaviour to see. A fantastic example of a symbiotic relationship where one species can help another at its vulnerable time. Now, from one pair to another, Chris and Michaela, what do you think you are? Are you a silver-studded blue or an ant? Which way round?
Well, I must be the butterfly mix because I'm never irritating.
Well, Do you know, I thought that the ants were trying to save the butterfly, and because I'm your friend, I'd want to be an ant and take all those cloths away from you and save you from being dragged down, Chris. But that's just me.
I've got a little bird in my ear telling me that there's a big bird out there that we can go to live at the moment. So here in the tree, being filmed with the camera that's been covering our oyster catchers, is one of our white-tailed eagles. What a way
Look
to...
at that, live on our cameras.
Oh.
We're super excited about this because this is just brilliant to be able to see a white-tailed eagle on this coastline at all, isn't it, Chris?
Yeah, look at that. One of the pair that Megs was looking at when she went out in the boat the other day, and they've been staying together as a pair down here throughout the course of this spring. And of course, all eyes will be on them next year when they reach a slightly mature age, and we'll be wondering whether they're going to breed. Look at this one. Oh, what a bird. Honestly, what a way to finish the series, live on one of our cameras. White-tailed eagle. That's
And
what
it's
you're
just
paying
hanging
your licence fee
around.
for.
Yes.
Oh, my goodness me, look at that.
You might be able to carry on watching that till 10 o'clock tonight on our live cameras.
Fantastic.
While we've been here at Arm, we've set ourselves a bit of a challenge to see who out of the team can spot all 6 of the native British reptile species that you can find here at Arm, one of the few places in the country that you can see all 6. I'm in the lead so far, Chris. I saw 5 out of 6. The adder has escaped me. Apparently, Megan saw the adder, took a picture, although she didn't get, I think it was the smooth snake and the grass snake. What have you seen?
Sand lizard.
Is that it? Sand
Yeah.
lizard?
Yeah.
That's really impressive. You need
It
to keep
is. It
your
was a
eyes
lovely
open.
lizard, actually. It was a very, very beautiful lizard.
But you know what? It
Lovely.
seems like our birds of prey have been doing their own reptile count. They've been bringing in plenty of reptiles to their chicks. So this was our kestrel nest early on, and we counted 12 sand lizards at least. That's a male, a beautiful green colour going down the gullet of that little baby kestrel. What about the buzzards? They've been bringing in plenty of reptiles. Again, sand lizards. We counted 3. Once again, that's a male there. 14 grass snakes have been flown in and fed to those chicks like a long bit of spaghetti. Look at that. Can you believe that's gone down whole? And slow worms. That's also gone down the gullet of a buzzard. Look at that. Go on, get it down. Go on. And there's another one. So plenty of reptiles feeding the chicks. Kestrels, again, going back to them. 5 common lizards. Despite being our commonest reptile, only 5. I can't believe it's going to get that down. I mean, they've all struggled a little bit. But, yep, they've done a good count, I reckon.
Indeed. So the one species that we haven't seen them taking, that we would have expected to see them, is the adder. Not until today, when our buzzards got into the ophiphagy. Oh yes, look at this. They brought in an adder today. It was still alive in the nest, and the chick is standing above it. Now, I know what you're thinking. This is Britain's only venomous snake. Is this chick in peril? Is it even more in peril when it starts to swallow a living adder whole? Well, you've got to think there's a difference between venom and toxin. Venom has to be directly injected into the bloodstream to have its effect. If you swallow venom and you incapacitate it through your digestive system, then it cannot become toxic. And what you can see here is the chick tearing up the adder's head. Now, obviously the venom glands are in that head and it is swallowing them, but unless it has a lesion, an ulcer in its stomach, there's very little chance that that venom will get directly into its bloodstream and therefore have any potent effect. And what we've noticed, not in birds actually, but in mammals, is that many species have anti-hemorrhagic or anti-neurotoxic antibodies in their blood. So over a period of time, they've evolved to be able to be more tolerant of snake venom should it accidentally get into their system. Now, we've seen our buzzards feeding on lots of reptiles here, so they may have gone down that route. There are other raptors, even those that we see in Europe, things like short-toed eagles that feed a lot more on snakes, so it's likely that they might have done. But going back to the start there, the fact that it's taken basically a buzzard to show us an adder is a really worrying sign of the times. These were very common reptiles. They've declined through habitat fragmentation, existing in isolated populations, and a study in Belgium published last year showed that massive introductions of non-native pheasants could make them locally extinct and impossible to recolonise. Our adders are in trouble. They really need some decent conservation, not more buzzards eating them like that.
I'll tell you what, though, watching that buzzard, I think Beaky Blinder really is fitting. I felt sorry for the chick that it pecked. I feel rather sorry for that snake that it ate alive. But they have been feeding their chicks lots of reptiles. Not the smooth snake, that was the one that was missing,
Smooth snake was missing, that's
Yeah.
right, yeah. But they've been quite ophiophagus.
I like that word.
Ophiophagus.
Ophiophagus.
Yeah.
At the beginning of the show, we treated all our mammal lovers to some very cute wildcat kittens. And because it's the last show, just for the mammal lovers, we've got something else adorable. We're going to catch up with our Scottish fox cub family. There they are, that's where we first saw them, looking so adorable. And then a month later, they've got those red coats with a little white tip. Now remember, these are being filmed by Jess McCaffrey up in Scotland. She named them the Bluebell Fox family, and she's got a trail camera that's been watching them. And we've seen them play, we've seen them learn to hunt. Then she's put a few more cameras out, trail cameras, which means we've been able to follow them a little bit further, and they've gone from their den and headed down to the river. And we've seen them successfully hunting. That was the adult with the cubs following on behind. And then we've seen the cubs with some prey in their mouths as well. And we've seen that on the programme, haven't we? We saw that fox cub take our meadow pipit chicks. Beautiful shot, that, in the daytime, looking absolutely gorgeous. And it's been a real delight to see these fox cubs grow up. Except that one, look at that one, Chris. That's extraordinary. Its head just looks too big for its body, doesn't it?
You see, when it came up there now, it was all fringe-lit, backlit by the sun. I was almost tempted to use the C word.
But it's obviously, unfortunately, the R word as well, which is a little bit of a runt, that one, isn't it?
But it's cute, though, isn't it? God, gorgeous, aren't they, fox cubs?
Thank you very much to Jess as well for sending those pictures to us.
Thanks, Jess. Time to head back to North Wales now, to the superbly spectacular South Stack, where Gillian is.
It is spectacular, but here at South Stack, we've decided to focus on the foreground, the low down and dirty stuff here. Now, we're focusing on the plant community, particularly on rarities. There's a term for these rarities, axiophytes, which means the rarities that are like the jewels in the crown of the plant community. And there's certainly one axiophyte here at South Stack. It's the South Stack fleawort. Now, it will look familiar to many of you because this is a member of the daisy family, and it follows the same basic plan of like an open flower head that acts as a landing pad for pollinators. That is pretty much as far as the familiarity goes because this is an endemic species. It's found nowhere else in the world. The nearest relative of this species is found on the opposite side of the country in the southeast of England. So it's a real enigma. And all of this knowledge is gleaned from a very, very passionate plant ecologist who've had the absolute pleasure of meeting a few days ago to talk about the rare plants of Wales.
My name is Robbie Blackhall-Miles. I'm the Vascular Plants Officer for the charity Plant Life, and I look after rare and endangered plants all across Wales. Looking after rare and endangered plants involves literally critical care for some of our most threatened species here in Wales. So this is rosy saxifrage, or Irish saxifrage, and this plant is now extinct in the wild here in Wales. But in the late 1960s, the last plant of this was seen in the wild. Luckily, the person that found it collected a little cutting of it, and we've managed to keep those cuttings going in cultivation ever since. Meet the Menai whitebeam. This tree is probably one of the most threatened tree species in the world. There's only about 30 plants of it that grow just here on the shore of the Menai Straits, and they are really threatened by climate change, particularly sea level rise. Because of that, I decided that the best thing to do would be to try and bring them into cultivation, grow some on, and then get them planted out into places that they are less at risk. And that's what we're doing. We've got about 30 of them here, and there's some distributed around a whole bunch of other people. Plants should be cared about by people. They take that energy from the sun and turn it into something that's usable here on this planet. They provide the air that we breathe. They manage the water in our atmosphere. They provide us with food. They literally provide us with everything, all from turning that energy from the sun into things that we are able to use. Plants are really, really important. This plant here is tufted saxifrage, and they all grow on the tops of boulders in one of our national nature reserves. There's only 7 plants in the wild in Wales, but there's 200 plants in this cold frame. It's really threatened because it doesn't see enough cold in the winter, and then it gets prolonged periods of drought in the summer. It can feel really incredible to be involved in the future survival of these plants. It can also feel really hard. To be the person that has the future of a plant species in my hands is absolutely immense. And I try not to think about that too much. I try to just get on with the job. I'm about to put those plants back into the wild, and I know that we're going to give them the best chance possible. That's an absolutely amazing feeling. It makes all the hard knocks really worthwhile, and allows me to think, we can do this. We can help these species.
How special it was to meet Robbie. And if you want to find out more about Robbie's work or the rare plants of Wales, head to our website. There's plenty of information for you there. So now to animals, a group of animals that are utterly dependent on our trees. Earlier this spring, Megan went to Gloucestershire to meet the conservationists who are ensuring a future for our tree-dwelling bats.
Trees like this one, for me, always encourage imagination. I want to know what it's lived through, who's sat at the bottom of its trunk, and even what's lived within its branches. Veteran trees are so important. All the deep bark and crevices and natural holes give room for life. Everything from our invertebrate species to our birds, and even some of our rarest mammals, like the bats. 14 of our 18 bat species in the UK regularly roost in trees. But these species are really tricky to find, and we know very little about them. Today, I'm teaming up with ecologist and bat conservationist Jim Mulholland, whose 5-year research project in Gloucestershire is focused on understanding and improving the future of tree-dwelling bat species. Now, I know, obviously, when you think about bats, you think about caves or even people's rooftops, but actually the majority of our UK species like to roost in trees.
They do indeed, yes. They all have different requirements. And so when we look at the tree behind us, we can see features such as splits and cracks, or maybe a bit of flaking bark. And these create crevice-type features.
And do they have a preference for specific tree types or older trees like these veteran trees?
Well, the longer a tree has been living and growing, the greater the opportunity that the tree has to develop these types of features.
These unique formations in trees are so important for bats. Some of our rarest bats never roost in urban areas, so these veteran trees are vital for them. Jim and his team have been surveying these forests for years to find out where exactly they like to roost, so they can pave the way for brand new protections. I'm joining Jim on a survey, visiting a confirmed bat roost to see if anyone's home.
Yeah, you made that look easy.
One step at a time.
One step at a time.
So the roost is just ahead of us here.
This is it.
That tiny thing there. And the entrance is only maybe a couple of centimetres wide.
I mean, it's so tricky. I mean, there is no way that I would have ever found this naturally. So should we see, well, if there are any even inside?
Sure. So here I have an endoscope, and we are going to use this to have a look inside the feature. It's important to say that I have a licence to allow us to do this, because we may be encountering bats and therefore disturbing bats. I see a ring.
Have you got something? Oh my God, a little face. We have bat. Oh my gosh, look.
And the ring is one of the animals that we've encountered before, so it may have been the female bat that we tagged initially and followed back to this roost.
Wow, so she could be using this time and time again. I mean, that's good data, isn't it? To understand that females are coming back to the same place over and over again.
Absolutely. So you can see the really big ears, gap between the ears. That tells us is a Beckstein's bat, one of the UK's rarest bats.
You're kidding. It's a Beckstein's bat.
Incredibly lucky.
That's amazing. Honestly, yeah, I think that's made my spring.
So I'm going to come out now, so we don't want to cause too much disturbance.
Surveys like this one can help support protection orders of roosting bats and their nesting sites. But as land use changes and more veteran trees are felled, these natural cracks and holes that bats rely on are becoming few and far between. So Jim and his team are having to think of a more radical way to support the future generations.
Okay, it's a pretty big bit of wood you've just cut out.
What we're trying to do here is to create some roosts in living trees.
Most people would just simply put up a bat box. So why not just kind of nail one up to a tree?
So bat boxes are great, they have their place, and we know that some species will use them, but they're not suitable for all species. Bat boxes get a little bit too hot during the summer and a little bit too cold during the winter. And so compare that to a tree. You've got lots of wood surrounding the bats. That's full of moisture, that's drawing water up from the roots all the way up to the leaves. That keeps things cool in the summer and warmer in the winter.
I've got to ask the question, does it damage the tree at all?
So yeah, it does. But what's useful to understand is that trees grow in a completely different way to you or I. So when they're damaged like this, they will seal off that area and then just carry on growing.
To create their new potential roosting site, Jim cuts the back of the wood away. And a hole is then drilled into the front to provide access to the new cavity. This ingenious design replicates the cracks and damage that can only appear in older trees and will hopefully provide these tree-dwelling bats with new roosting sites. Although it may be a few years before we know how successful this method is, it's projects such as these that are providing pioneering new means to safeguard the future of our wildlife.
There we go, it's all in, job done.
All we need now are the bats.
I think that's what I like about this project so much, though, is that it is so new and it's based off of recent science. And this is definitely a very new approach.
We're breaking new ground here. I'm really excited, and I hope we look back on this moment and say, yeah, it was the start of something really good.
Innovative conservation, new ways of doing things to protect the species we all love so much. It was great to meet Jim and find out all about that research and conservation project, and I hope it all goes really well in the future. But behind the scenes when we were filming that, we also made a little film to see what goes on when we're out and about filming, and you can see that film on our website. It's a bit funny, I've got to climb up a tree on a rope, so I recommend you go and watch it. Now, I've made my way to the top of the hill because I wanted to look out over the water, because my favourite time, or one of my favourite times in Springwatch, was when I got to go on a boat to try and see the white-tailed eagles and the ospreys. And I thought it was only right, considering how much I love these two birds, to do a little bit of a last recap on them. Let's visit our ospreys first. Let's go live to that nest now. Here we've got CJ7 diligently feeding those 3 chicks. Look how gently she does it. Now it's quite warm up there, but you can see that with the breeze it kind of helps keep them cool. But we've watched them grow over the last 3 weeks, and what a privilege that has been. They started off at these small, vulnerable things on the 2nd of June, being really well looked after by both mum and dad. And then as they started getting older, they started getting a little bit more feisty with one another. But you see this, siblings squabble sometimes, and that's all kind of natural as long as it doesn't go any further. Please, ospreys, don't let it go any further. But I'm pretty pleased to say right now, harmony is in the nest, and they're all seeming to be getting along really well. The oldest is about 2.5 weeks old, the youngest about 2 weeks. They've still got a long way to go. They'll fledge in another 4 to 5 weeks. And at the end of July, the Birds of Poole Harbour team will make their way up to the nest to put that ring on them so they'll be easily identified, and to sex them. Really important, of course, in terms of conservation. And here they are today. They've grown so much, they've got darker. What a treat to see these birds. So this is the 2nd nest we've had in the south of England for over 200 years. CJ7 and 022, absolute superstars that they are, providing all of those insights into osprey behaviour and bringing them back to where they belong, which is so, so critical. But of course, we're not the only ones who have been enjoying seeing them in the area. Lots of you have been out taking photographs of them too. Check this out. Here we have one of the ospreys around Poole Harbour. Not entirely sure which individual this could be, can't see a ring on it, but they're such efficient hunters. They've got this amazing vision to pinpoint prey. And this is the image that you're going to see if you're a fish about to be predated on. You've got those really intense eyes just staring you down. Really cool to see. Goodness me, I do absolutely love an osprey. Now, of course, our wildlife cameras very sadly will be switching off at 9 p.m. tonight. And I know what you're thinking, you want to see how those chicks do. Well, I'm pleased to say that that wildlife camera will be continuing on the Birds of Poole Harbour website, and you can find all the details to it on our website too. So do keep watching for those chicks to fledge. Now, what about the white-tailed eagles? Well, earlier on I had the privilege of going and seeing them live, and earlier on in the programme, one perfectly timed went and sat down for us so we could see. Now, we've got the male G463 and female G466, and they've tantalised us throughout the course of the series. They've been so close and yet so far. But the pair have seemed to make their home on this sandbank peninsula, where they're often seen, and they fly in tandem together. They do these courtship kind of dances with each other. They're really pair bonded, but they're only about 3 years old, so they've got another year until they become sexually mature enough. Now, lots of you have also been out photographing them, and this is a really cool image. This is one of the birds, and it's caught a curlew. Now, they're amazing hunters, of course, and they've been feeding on a lot of different prey species, but curlew there. And here we are. We've got the male, I think, in the foreground. The male sadly only has one leg, but the female in the background. Gorgeous bird, looking very regal there, sat there. Now, hopefully next year could be the year that this pair come to breed, but we have to keep our fingers crossed because it will be the first time in about 230 years that they were back here in the south. Amazing. Now let's go back on over to Chris and Michaela on the other side of Arn. I mean, seriously, ospreys, white-tailed eagles, doesn't get much better than that.
You were extremely lucky to see a white-tailed eagle from the boat. And you know, we've been extremely lucky on the last show to see one on our live cameras, and we think it's still there. Let's go and check. Is it still there? White-tailed eagle? White-tailed eagle? Oh, there it is. What a shot of it, Chris.
I know, it's great. Look at the size of the beak.
I mean, did you honestly think all the years of doing Springwatch that you'd get a white-tailed eagle on one of our live cameras?
No.
That's a complete and utter treat.
Especially in the south of England. Outstanding, absolutely outstanding. We've also got a live fox, actually, down in the woods. I think we can go that to now. Is the fox down there in the woods? Let's have a look. Oh, we've got the
That's a bum shot, isn't it?
The backside of a fox. Oh, hold on. Well, I tell you what, we've just about got time to show you an extraordinary piece of film that was sent in to us by Louise Godfrey. 2 years ago, she filmed this. It's an osmia bee providing pollen for its future brood. It makes a cell in a tube like this, it packs it full of pollen, and then it lays an egg onto that pollen. Needless to say, when the egg hatches, the larvae feeds on that pollen. But it takes 2 years for it to emerge because it's locked down deep in that wood. This is an image of that same cell that Louise filmed earlier this year, And that's the bee emerging from it. So it's been in there for 2 years, and here it is emerging and flying out into the wide world. Louise, that's
Fabulous
fantastic.
footage.
Thank you
Really
very
glad
much.
we showed that. Okay, let's have a look at our live cameras for the last time, because they are being switched off at 9 o'clock, not 10 o'clock as I said earlier, 9 o'clock.
Wait, what about the foxes?
Oh,
What about the foxes?
Oh my goodness, look at those foxes. Oh, wow. Can you believe we're getting this sort of footage right at the end of our 3 weeks here? That is absolutely adorable. Let's go to our kestrels now. Let's have a look at them, because we've really enjoyed watching these. They started so tiny, didn't they? Look at them on the 29th of May, when there were 6 of them. Sadly, one of them died. And then they've been growing ever since, 13th of June. They started getting their adult feathers. I love that. When you look at them, they're all just peeking out of the box. But as I say, look at them. Their feathers are really coming through, and they've grown nearly the same size as the adult birds. They're still getting plenty of food. And when it's spreading its wings there, you can see that it won't be long before they do go. Possibly in a couple of days' time, actually. They're about 21 to 25 days now. 27 to 32 days.
Producing a pellet. Save
Yep.
the best till last.
Yeah, this is
Hey.
what we give you at the end of the show.
Yeah, enjoying your supper, are you?
Coughing a pellet up. It's undigested food. I'll tell you what, it stinks in that box. You can see there's a lot of poo around, and a little bit of stretch from this one, because it's looking at the skies, it's wanting freedom. This one in particular, looking out and thinking, when can I get out of here? But as I say, thoroughly enjoyed watching those kestrels.
Okay, before we go, let's take a look around the rest of our nest. We could start with the linnets. Female's been doing a fantastic job today of keeping the sun off of her brood. Look at that little linnet brolly there, and you can see the chicks raising up. They've been feeding them on seeds, a whole range of different seeds, which they take from close to the ground, regurgitate directly into the mouths of the chicks. And if you look carefully, sometimes you can see their throats swollen green with the seeds inside them. There, look at the one at the back. Superb. Stone chats, look in the foreground. They've had a visitor, a common lizard. Now, that's not going to bother the chicks, but if that was a large male sand lizard and those stone chat chicks were pretty small, there would have been a chance, I think, of reptilian predation there. But the male stone chat comes in, provides them with plenty of insect food that they've been finding. Barn owls too, plenty of food coming in. We've noticed a surfeit of small mammals. This larger chick here is trying to swallow a mouse whole. Maybe it's his first attempt, who knows? But the mouse kebab is fighting back. Our goshawks have been branching out and about. They've kind of left the nest most of the time now. And look at that, what a fantastic view. Oh yes. Yes, yes, yes. Oh, so good. Brilliant. And they've been provisioned with quite a few squirrels, actually. And here the adult brings the squirrel into the nest. Initially, there's a lot of fuss. They all claim to be hungry. But then when she exits and they look at what she's brought, they're clearly sick of squirrel, because they all go quiet and don't bother. What a superb... Oh, no, I don't
We've saved the last
it.
for you, Chris.
Oh, I don't believe it.
Special treat.
This is not what you pay your licence fee for.
It is.
Michaela, you can
Collared
provide
dove
everyone
chicks.
with a licence fee refund.
No, come on, they're
Collared dove.
gorgeous.
What a way to end a series. I apologise.
What a fantastic cast of characters we've had, including those collared doves. And I know that's brought us to the end of 3 fabulous weeks here at Arn. As always, it's gone way too quickly. It's been a series with lots of twists and turns, hasn't it? And it's been amazing to have Megan with us too, exploring the wider area around Arn. Thank you, Megan.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been the most amazing 3 weeks, filled with more wildlife than I could ever have imagined. The specialists here that are home in Dorset really made our time. The people, of course, working collaboratively, the habitats from the sandbanks to the forests, the oceans to the skies. It has been a true treat. Now, I have to thank every single person who has made this possible and supported us when we've been going out and filming. Thank you all so much. And to Yolo, we've missed you incredibly, and we're so glad you're feeling better. We hope we'll see you next time.
Well, we have reached the end of the road of our North Wales tour, and what a tour it's been. This place has it all, from mountains to the sea, and of course it's the wildlife that's really wowed us. So from the pied flycatchers with their complicated love lives to the absolutely magnificent buzzards as well. And Bella the pine marten, who could forget Bella the pine marten and watching her first steps into the wild. The red squirrels, the woodland specialists, to the sand martins on the beach. None of this would have been possible without the help of the amazing people we've met here. So a huge thank you from us to you. Diolch yn fawr.
Thank you, Gillian. And from our whole team here, we'd like to extend thanks to the RSPB Arm team and all of their partners in the Super National Nature Reserve. Thank you very much for your hospitality and all of your hard work helping us make the series.
And the biggest thanks to you for watching and for getting involved on all our social media platforms and being part of the wider Springwatch family. What a series it's been. We'll be back for Winterwatch, can you believe it, in 2024. It's been an unpredictable series. There's been sadness, there's been beauty, there's been heartwarming moments, and I hope you'll agree it's all been utterly brilliant. Spring may feel familiar, pulsing with life, pretty and predictable. But if this spring was a lesson in anything, it was to expect the unexpected.
There's been distress and there's been drama. And amid the chaos, things never seen before. Spring's harsh truth is that there's no greater challenge than trying to create new life. Especially when nature's balance has been tipped. The enormous loss of insects is bound to hit the ultimate insectivorous passerine hard, and it has.
But nature has a way of fighting back. We've seen bravery and dedication, lightness and laughter, unbelievable adaptation, resilience against the relentless challenges of our changing world.
The fact that we've got so many birds back this year is really heartwarming.
If we can explain how amazing insects are and how important they are, then I'm pretty sure most people would want to help save them.
And we can all help by coming together and working towards a common aim. We can give wildlife a chance.
Anything moved in yet?
Well, yeah, actually.
Yeah?
I have.
Oh, that's what I like to hear.
Biodiversity can bounce back. Natural rhythms can be restored.
We must bear witness to spring's harsh beauty. Learn from it, love it, and do what we can to save it. No matter how tough it gets. Our wonderful wildlife has given us a spring to remember. But what we've got to remember is that we need to give that wildlife the opportunity to give us many more.